He was also succeeded by a priest who was fundamentally important in the establishment of the mission here in Valley Crucis. Valley Crucis was just a valley back then, did not have a name. And I started thinking about, when did I first find out about this special place? Well, it went back to my first journey to this valley in March of 1970 as a 13-year-old, when I came to the conference center, one of its more recent incarnations over time, as a retreat center. And we were having youth retreats here and so forth. So here we showed up as part of the Grace Church youth group from Morganton, stayed in the beautiful inn next door, built in 1914. Little did I know, I had no idea the imprint that would be left upon my soul of this place and of the church all these decades. We stayed in the old inn, and if you haven't been into the main lobby, you really need to walk through there and take a look at the beautiful stone fireplace and hearth and gathering room, and that's where we all gathered that first night here, a bunch of teenagers. But we went up and had a great home-cooked meal up in the dining hall where we just had lunch, gathered around the fireplace at the feet of Billy Burns, who was the priest newly appointed from Kentucky, and was both the director of this new retreat center as well as rector of this, or I guess we would have been vicar of the mission at that time. Well, it was a chilly night, roaring fire, and there for the first time I heard about Valley Crucis. I heard about Bishop Ives and about Brother Skiles, about the missionary outpost that first brought the good news to the poor folks of the mountains in 1842. The very ground that we were gathered on, we were told, the same consecrated holy ground overlooking that same expansive valley as those first missionaries. Well, true to form to this neck of the woods, the weather changed. Overcast skies became even more overcast, and that night we had a heck of a snow. So the next day we had snowball fights and a lot of playing and singing and community building exercises. Great stories we heard over and over. Every corner of the place has its own story. And it galvanized our group very quickly into a small community of faithful to take up our cross. We heard about our cross as being a reflection of the cross in the valley, where the place got its name. Both legend and history seem to imply that it was Bishop Ives who named the place. It seems that the confluence of three creeks here in the valley, Dutch, Clark's, Crab Orchard Creek, they gathered, flowed then into the Watauga. And it was there where the mist would gather over these creeks and rise in the valley, giving the shape of a St. Andrew's cross, so seen by Bishop Ives. And also, I'm sure he was mindful of another place, if you haven't ever been there, an old Cistercian abbey, the ruins in Valley Crucis, Wales. Very similar topography to the place here. Well, I couldn't articulate it at the time, I don't think, but this brief weekend in Valley Crucis reminds me and convinces me that this truly is one of those thin places that our Celtic ancestors, Christian ancestors, talk about, where well lived in and well prayed in places are very, very sacred. They say these are places where heaven and earth meet, only separated by a thin, translucent-like membrane. Places where, from time to time, you can't distinguish which side of God's kingdom you might be on. Well, the spirit that came over me, I think, was the same spirit that's been hovering over this valley since even before the Christians showed up. And I think it was also the one that convinced a noted botanist of his day, and also a forgotten priest of his day, to claim this place as the site of this westernmost missionary outpost. Throughout history, many have cited or speculated that the botanist who told Bishop Ives of this new territory was Asa Gray. Gray was widely known to travel here in the Carolinas. However, the personal connection with Ives was never satisfactorily connected. The botanist was the Reverend Moses Ashley Curtis, an Episcopal priest. Following the death of Parson Miller in 1834, there were a succession of a few missionaries here to serve the same area. One was John Steinforth Kidney, who later was professor of divinity at Seabury Western Seminary in Chicago. The other was Moses Ashley Curtis. In 1835, he was appointed the Circuit of Congregations by Bishop Ives. Moses was born in 1808. I love these names. His father was the Reverend Jared Curtis, and his mother was Thankful. Think of that as you will. But they were born in Charlestown, Mass., the same community, same town where Miller hailed. The elder Curtis was ordained congregational minister, served as chaplain in the state prison for 50 years. Following his graduation from Williams College, Moses made his way to Wilmington, where he met and married Mary de Rosette, daughter of devout Episcopalian A.J. de Rosette. Curtis made acquaintance with Ives and soon began studies for ordination under his oversight. According to letters from his wife Mary, Bishop Ives struck up a personal and intellectual friendship. They both were New Englanders, sons of clergy, shared that evangelical pioneer spirit, and would sit for hours talking about how to spread the good news to the state. This field of labor that they seemed to talk about and was made evident when, immediately following Curtis's ordination in 1835, he was assigned here to the Western Mission. He served the same circuit as Miller. And in August of that year, Mary, his wife, says that botany stands a fine chance with our frequent journeyings into the mountains. Just last week, we traversed Table Rock, 2,500 feet above the surrounding country by a recent measurement of Dr. Mitchell. Table Rock stands on the south side of the Linville Gorge, about 35 miles southwest of here. They also made sojourns up top of Grandfather Mountain. But it was through the memoirs of their son, the Reverend Charles Curtis, where we found the link that connects the botanist to the bishop and to Valley Crucis. It was their pioneer spirit which sent them both on their missionary enterprises and conversations, and sent my father into the rugged mountain country of western North Carolina to live and work amongst the simple mountaineers in the hard, primitive conditions 30 years before a railroad penetrated that part of the way. It was the priest and the botanist's presence here on the ground amongst the mountain people, amidst the outdoor cathedrals of the valleys and the mountains and the lush valleys, where he had the vision of placing the Episcopal outposts. Curtis tells that his father joined with Bishop Ives to work out a feasible plan to evangelize, teach, and serve the mountain people, and out of it evolved a large, comprehensive scheme centering and starting in a proposed associate mission and training school to be located at Valley Crucis, Watauga County. Curtis was here until 1837 and then went to Raleigh to teach at St. Mary's School. But he would come here every summer. And he would scale the heights of Table Rock, Grandfather Mountain, and then he would say, and then even beyond that. He was a careful observer and a sagacious botanist in response to some questions about, well, was he that well known? And the truth was, he was one of the most highly respected botanists of his day. He corresponded frequently with Asa Gray, A.W. Ravenel, William Sullivan, and their sine qua non publication of Flora of the Southern States was actually dedicated to Moses Ashley Curtis because of his preeminent work.